Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, tips for navigating the bear market. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. Now, I know the terminology bear market is not a popular term to hear, and I've seen so over the last several videos where we've discussing the idea. It has certainly not attracted a lot of positive comments. At the same time, I think that we need to remember that, as far as I'm concerned, when Bitcoin goes below its bull market support band and is putting in weekly closes below it, we must assume that the market is bearish until proven otherwise, right? Until proven otherwise. And I think that it typically works out. I mean, getting a weekly close down here helped us navigate the summer lull of 2021 when we said, look, guys, Bitcoin had a weekly close below the 21-week EMA and the 20-week SMA. It's generally safe to assume that we are not going to be going back above it for at least 3 months. And in that case, it worked out to be the best case scenario because it only took about 3 months later until we were back above the bull market support band. So then again, today we have to look at the market and say, well, as we said 2 months ago when we first crossed below this, we understand that that is a bear market. So Bitcoin turned bearish when we were unable to hold the bull market support band. This is my opinion, of course. I understand that people might disagree with it, and that's fine. But when I look at this chart, I say, all right, the bear market has been pretty much in full effect since late November. And so we are now about 12 weeks into this bear market. So I want to further talk about why I think the market remains bearish and why it's probably going to take longer. And this one only took 3 months, but clearly this one looks like it's going to take longer with this most recent rejection off of the bull market support band. So if we come to the theory or the reasoning that the market is bearish, then there's certain tools or strategies that you can use to better navigate a bear market. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, I understand that we all want to see Bitcoin go to a certain price by a certain date. I know a lot of people were hopeful of 100K Bitcoin by the end of 2021 or even higher. And while I would like to think that there is a chance that we could go higher over the next 18 months, we also need to prepare for all scenarios, okay? I think seasoned investors, not just in crypto, the ones that really do the best, they don't focus in on one thing, but they always consider the risk on both sides, okay? So if you think the market is going to go down, you should consider the risk of, well, what if it goes up, okay? If you think the market's going to go up, you should consider what is the risk if it goes down. We have to do that. We owe it to ourselves to look at all aspects of the market rather than just looking at what we want to look at and ignoring everything else, okay? So the reason the market remains bearish is because we've now had not one, but 2 rejections off of the bull market support band. Whereas back over here in mid 2021, you can see we seamlessly got back above the bull market support band and then furthermore held it as support. Now that we are seeing rejection here, I think it's safe to assume that the market is going to remain bearish for a while longer. Okay, so what are some tips for navigating a bear market? Regardless of how long it lasts, what are some tips? The first tip, and these are some of these things I know people are going to disagree with. Okay, I understand that, but this is just what I've experienced myself, and we've talked about on this channel, some before, mainly on the premium stuff. But first of all, cash is king. And I understand that as crypto investors, we like to make fun of cash and say that, all right, well, it's just going to lose value due to inflation every single month. But the problem is that in a bear market, it really is king. Why? Because if the general idea is that prices are going to slowly go down, then you're essentially much better off having some type of a cash position. Now, I'm not saying that I'm selling all my crypto, but what I am saying is that accumulating a cash position is a good idea. Okay? Accumulating a cash position. So what does that mean? Well, it could mean that if you're putting in money into the market, if you're putting money into the market every single week or every single month, perhaps you should take a step back and start accumulating a cash position. Not financial advice, of course, but this is some strategies that I've learned along the way. And the reason is because if in 3 months from now you think there is a probability at all of lower prices, then I'm sure your future self would appreciate it if your current self would acknowledge that possibility and start planning for it. One of the biggest issues, or one of the biggest hardships I think that is difficult to watch for crypto investors, are capitulation candles. What makes them harder is if you don't have the money to buy them. Okay? If you watch a capitulation come and go and you don't actually take advantage of it, then it's pretty brutal because you can't actually recognize the highest returns for whatever the next parabolic rally is going to be. If you can start accumulating a cash position and prepare for potentially lower prices, then eventually you'll be able to deploy that cash. So number one, cash is king. And furthermore, accumulating some type of a cash position is often useful during phases of the market like this. We talked about this a few days ago. Number two, alts are incredibly risky. Okay? And we're going to talk about this one for a few minutes here because I really need to address this. Okay, alts are risky. What does that mean? Am I just saying alts are risky? Because we know alts are always risky, right? Alts are always risky. So why am I saying this? It's because the risk profile on altcoins changes when Bitcoin is below its bull market support band. Okay, so I'll say that again. When Bitcoin's below the bull market support band, the risk profile on altcoins changes. So if Bitcoin had held this as support, then altcoins would still be holding up relatively well. Even if Bitcoin was, not putting in new all-time highs, just holding it as support would have at least allowed more confidence to the altcoin market. The problem is that when Bitcoin is in a downtrend below its bull market support band, then altcoins are completely incapable of regaining the confidence that we would like to see them regain because Bitcoin does not really give them the chance to breathe. Okay, so what does that mean when I say alts are risky? Well, if Bitcoin is destined to bleed more than it currently has, which does seem like a likely possibility considering this most recent rejection off of the bull market support band, then you have to assume, generally speaking, that a lot of altcoins will bleed worse than Bitcoin. So then the question becomes, well, if you are putting money into the market, should you be focusing on Bitcoin or altcoins or stable coins? I would argue that in terms of priority, altcoins should be the lowest priority. And the reason is because they are likely just going to bleed against Bitcoin and the US dollar until Bitcoin finds some strength, whether that's getting above the bull market support band or having some type of major capitulation flush out candle. Either one of those two situations could lead to alts having a better risk profile. But at the current time, it's hard to look at altcoins and think they look attractive when Bitcoin's below the bull market support band. Now, I understand that a lot of people don't really want to hear that, right? Because we all want to see our altcoins go up. And if Bitcoin is able to get above the bull market support band, then perhaps we can go back to risk on. The problem is that we have to work with the information that we have at any given time. And right now, the information that we have is that Bitcoin has been rejected off of the bull market support band, and we can see that altcoins have taken a pretty big hit. So think about this. The last time that Bitcoin was at 33K, altcoin valuations against the US dollar were actually probably either the price they are now or potentially lower, a lot of them. So if you have to imagine if Bitcoin goes back to 33K again, the altcoin USD valuations are likely going to be worse than the first time Bitcoin went to $33,000, meaning the Bitcoin valuations will be even worse as well. So the first two tips for navigating a bear market are that cash is king, that alts are risky, and then third, support lines to some degree, if I could actually write here, turn into memes. So I'll just write memes. The reason I say that support lines become memes is we get into this habit of wanting to rationalize why we're going to a certain level. And maybe it's to say, all right, well, we're holding support on some trend line, Maybe switching this to a linear scale looks a little bit more reasonable. But it could be saying we want to find support on some trend line, or we need to go retest a prior level, like for instance retesting the move that took us back to 33K on this move right here, or 38K on this move right here. There's all sorts of reasons that we can sort of rationalize why things have to go a certain way. But the problem is that when the market is bearish, it has a way of making a meme out of all of these, support lines and stuff. So what's more important than support lines are resistance lines. So I would say instead of thinking of support, think of resistance. So you need to change your line of thinking from assuming that support is going to hold to assuming resistance is going to hold until proven otherwise. The reason I say that is because the resistance that we need to break through is the bull market support band. And we've pretty clearly gotten rejected off it twice now. 2 separate times, Bitcoin has been rejected off of its bull market support band. And so if we've seen 2 separate times of rejection, then clearly the resistance of the bull market support band is a lot more important than whatever imaginary support lines we want to draw down below. Okay, so do consider this possibility. Now, you have to be willing to shift your line of thinking, okay? Strong opinions loosely held, right? Strong opinions loosely held. We all have strong opinions about things, and we all have strong opinions about where we want to see Bitcoin go. I know a lot of people wanted to see Bitcoin go to 100K in 2021, and clearly we did not make it to those levels. But if the market is telling you something different than what you want to hear, then you have to be able to pivot to something else, to thinking in a different way. And right now, the market has been telling us something different. It's just that a lot of people don't want to hear it, right? A lot of people just don't want to hear it. But it's been telling us, right? It's been saying, look, we're in a downtrend and we're getting rejected by the bull market support band more than once. The dollar is in an uptrend, holding support on the bull market support band itself. And you also have things like the NASDAQ testing its prior lows. So it's hard to look at everything in, together and find an immediate bullish case. Now, listen, that does not mean that Bitcoin cannot turn bullish later this year. It does not mean that Bitcoin cannot turn bullish in 2023. But what we can say is that in the short term, Bitcoin is in a bear market. Bear markets can last for different periods of time. But right now, it certainly does look like Bitcoin is in a bear market, getting rejected off of the bull market support band twice now. If we go back and look at the last time this happened, you'll go back to 2019. We came up here, we came below the bull market support band, we got rejected. We came up the second time and got above it, but then we had the pandemic and basically then the floor fell out, okay? And then we ended up getting back above it later on, but first we had to have this major capitulation before we resumed the party. If you go back to 2018, you can see we got rejected a number of times before finally the bottom fell out, and then that ended up being the new market cycle bottom. Okay, so you need, and I mean you absolutely have to be able to pivot to something if the market is telling you something different. No one knows exactly what's going to happen. Bitcoin could always go back to 50K next week, and then we'll be joking about how wrong I was in this video if that happens. But I do think it's very, very important for people to take this seriously and to consider that stacking cash during a market that is in a downtrend makes a lot of sense. Altcoins are risky, right? Extremely risky. If you want to accumulate them, you have to understand that you are taking on an incredible amount of risk right now. You can always accumulate them via staking or lending or something like that, but they are very, very risky at the moment. Support lines end up becoming memes because what's more important are the resistance lines above, not the support lines below. 3 key tips for navigating a bear market for Bitcoin are right here, okay? And I do think it's time to really take this seriously, because if you can just for a minute accept that this is a reality, then you can start planning for how you want to navigate this reality, okay? If you ignore the reality and you continue YOLOing everything into your favorite altcoin, then what happens if that altcoin drops another 30 or 40% or more? potentially, right? I mean, what happens? Then you're not going to have any cash to buy the real dip when it comes, if it comes. Now, there are no absolutes in this market, and there's no guarantees we go down to any certain price, but you need to plan for it. Okay, if you don't plan for lower prices, then you're not doing your future self a favor, even if those prices never actually come to fruition. Even if Bitcoin never goes below $30,000 again, you're not doing yourself any favors by not planning for it to do so. Okay, so try to consider these as tips for navigating the cryptoverse. Number 4, hedge. There's other asset classes you can hedge in. Okay, there's commodities. If you think about a subset of that, like precious metals, they tend to do well during a risk-off environment. But having exposure to other asset classes besides crypto, it's a great way to hedge. If crypto drops 50%, you don't want your net worth to drop by 50%. You would want only it to be limited to your allocation in crypto, which hopefully crypto is not 100% of your portfolio. So having a hedge, I think, is quite useful. And from here, the last thing, I guess, is to just be patient. Okay, sometimes the best thing you can do during bear markets is just to tune out for a while. I'll still be here every day, basically making videos and trying to navigate this thing until we can get back above the bull market support band. But there's nothing wrong with just tuning out for a while and doing something different for a while and trying to pass the time until the markets look better. There's nothing wrong with that, and I've done it many times in the past. During prior bear markets. The last half of 2019 was pretty brutal, and I didn't really make many videos back then. It was just a boring time in the market, And also 2018 was brutal as well, and I didn't have a YouTube channel back then, but I also just sort of tuned out for a while because there's no fun in just watching the market go down for a while. So I think it's important to recognize that Bitcoin right now is in a bear market. Whatever happens next month, 6 months from now, does not change the fact, in my opinion, that this is a bear market. Whether we go up or whether we go down and then we go up, I still would argue that the current price action is very suggestive that Bitcoin right now is in fact in a bear market. And now we're basically in the process of trying to find some type of a bottom. So try to consider all of this. I know it's a lot to take in. We've been talking about this for a few weeks now, but I wanted to just outline various tips for navigating a bear market and the way that you can hopefully help protect your capital and not constantly YOLO it into whatever the most recent dip is. Because the problem is that when people shift from being in a bull market or thinking in a bull market mode versus a bear market mode, in a bull market mode, buying the dip is sort of the default thing you do because you generally expect the prices to go up. The problem with buying a dip in a bear market is the dip normally just keeps on dipping. And if you bet everything early on, if you YOLO everything early on, then you run out of chips to scoop the dip up with. And you need chips for later on whenever the real dip happens, if in fact we do get a capitulation candle. So I know this is a lot to take in. Try to think about it. Try to think about what strategy you want to use to navigate this bear market. And we'll eventually come out the other side and we'll eventually hold the bull market support band as support. But we're not holding it as support now, and we've clearly kicked the can down the road in terms of when we're going to hold it as support. So hopefully this video is useful. Leave a comment down below. If you disagree with this being a bear market, I'd love to know why. I suppose that you could argue that we're just, there's no sense in calling it a bear market until we break below 30K. But I would argue that if an asset is down 40, 50% over 3 or 4 months, to me, that's a bear market. And I'm going to assume that the trend is down until proven otherwise. I would love to be proven otherwise, but we just haven't been proved otherwise yet. So there you have it. Strong opinions, loosely held. Okay, be willing to pivot when the market proves you wrong. And I'm certainly having to recognize here, as we've said for the last few weeks, that this is in fact a bear market. And they're really assuming that we are in a bear market anytime we go below the bull market support band does tend to be a relatively safe assumption until proven otherwise. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. I'll see you next time. Bye.